This is a headline. Seek clarity on your life's purpose. Because, and I think it's bang on, your identity will die. Once you walk out of that building on the last day, it's over. You know, like they don't care about you. And they do, like as a person, but they don't care about you from like a professional perspective. They got business problems, they're going to deal with them themselves. They got something they're working on, they don't need you anymore. Oh boy, cue the existential crisis. You've successfully brought two companies together, except for one nagging detail. You. Turns out you successfully made yourself irrelevant to the operations of the business, and now it's time for you to walk away. It'll be one of the toughest walks of your life. Ladies and gentlemen, Episode 4, Season 2, Startup Different, Christopher, David, and Business. Hello.
It's quitting day.
Quitting day? Oh, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. I was like, are you telling me right now on the pod that you're not doing this anymore? Because that's kind of weird.
No, that wasn't what I meant.
And then we publish it anyway.
Awkward.
It's a weird way to put in your resignation, but that's fine. It's fine, I guess. Well, yeah, today this is kind of a big episode. So this is... like cue the sad walking away music from the Incredible Hulk, So this is basically all about how you feel, like kind of your last job as a founder, which is to make yourself irrelevant in the business. And actually, interestingly, kind of ties back to episode 1 of this season and of this series. That is sort of like you build your business, you want to build to sell, in the sense that you want to build a business that can survive without you. So this is kind of when you're cashing in on this, but you're also rounding out some pretty sharp edges in some cases. Like there's actually quite a bit of work here. It's always what I was surprised by was how much more work it was than I anticipated. Like how many things I just did casually that ended up actually being, something that was important to the business, important enough. But, I think what I want to do first to really like kind of set the stage is I want to go back and talk about how in 2019, when you and I were having conversations down on Lake Ontario.
I told you I was born to be acquired.
Your LinkedIn tagline, making another appearance. Yeah. Born to be acquired. And, basically me saying to you though, like, are we going to be able to do this? Because like I had seen, like, obviously I worked really hard too, but like you had poured your heart and soul into the product.
A lot of late nights, for sure.
A lot of late nights. Yeah. The life of a CTO is a tough one. It really is. Like it's a complex work. It's demanding. When something goes wrong, this is obviously software company specific, but like basically whoever your product like owner is at your company, like that is a tough job.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like anything goes wrong, ultimately it's the CTO's fault or problem to deal with.
I helped.
So, yeah.
I helped. I could deflect it, but like, at the end of the day, the actual like figuring out the problem. It's not really like no one likes being yelled at, and sometimes the customer yells at you. And that's not very much fun. But hopefully that doesn't happen. It didn't happen that much, but it does happen.
No, it didn't happen very often. But you're always kind of like nervous about it. You're always kind of like it's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I remember I was really surprised because I said, are we willing to do this? And are we ready to do this? Like ready, like being like emotionally ready, to do this. And you were just like, yes, absolutely, let's go. And part of it, I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm gonna, is that you thought maybe like this was, the escape, because the job is so tough. You were like, great, we can sell and so I can be done, and then I'll be happy. I'll be on my, out there surfing every day, wake surfing every day or whatever the heck you want to do in the lake, I just don't know if you were. I don't think you were really thinking about it.
It kind of goes back to, we talked about this in an earlier episode, but like, when you are in that thinking about being acquired or thinking about selling your business, like anytime you have a problem, then you're like, oh, we should just sell, Yeah. And then, like 30 seconds later, you're like, what? No, this isn't a big problem. I can deal with this, like whatever. It's just that weird extra thing that you have to think about. So yeah. And I have to admit, when we first kind of like explored the idea of, being acquired, and I was like, yeah, hey, like I was born to be acquired. When I fast forward to like the night of our last day, I remember being, we were outside the office, standing on the sidewalk, looking back at the office. I was frigid. We were frozen. We were like underdressed for the weather. And I just remember being completely a wreck, in tears, thinking about like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do that anymore. I am not a CTO anymore, which is just, you think you're going to be ready for it. It's coming up for months and months and months. And then when it actually happens, you're not ready for it. It's a really tough moment for sure. Obviously got through it, like not a big deal, but in the moment it was traumatic. I think survived.
We'll get to this too. Like, I mean, there's a lot of identity tied up in whatever it is you do. Like at least around here, I know that one of the first 3 or 4 questions you get from any person you meet is like, well, what do you do? Because it's such a big part of your identity, right? And not, that's even before you've done like all this like investment and like both like literal time investment and like emotional investment into the business. So it is definitely a very stressful thing, but we'll come back to that, because I think the identity piece I want to really hammer home. But let's talk operationally first. So you have to make yourself irrelevant. Now, to some extent, you've done probably an okay job of this, just based on, again, what we've been talking about thus far. You've found ways to, bridge build, get people onto other teams and that kind of stuff. But you still need to kind of find what things that after you leave are going to be tougher for them to do. But the first, like the myth here that I really want to hammer home is you are not essential. Okay. That's that you need to start thinking that, the myth is that you're essential. You're not. Sorry, swing and a miss on that, but you know what I'm meaning. And so it's kind of like you need to really think about, okay, how do I make myself just not a big part of this? And the business will be okay after you move on. That's the other thing you got to think about too. It will be fine, but you're going to make the loss of you and your co-founder a lot more manageable, like literally manageable, for the company that's acquired you, and for your staff and people and your customers that you're leaving behind. It's a very, very, very big change. So at first it's kind of like all business, you want this, like you'll actually think about it very pragmatically. You'll be like, well, that's fine. Like, of course I want to be irrelevant. I got the money from the acquisition, and we've been transitioning this thing. That's fine. No problem. I want this. Like, I want this to happen. And over time, it does start happening. So
you have to keep reminding yourself of that, don't you, Dave? You've said it like 3 or 4 times.
I know. You can tell this is going to be a very weird episode.
You want this.
You want this, right?
But I think that's actually very telling, because it is one of those things where you're going to keep second guessing it, like all the way through the process. But you do want it. This was why you sold, was to have that opportunity to leave and do something new. And see
conversely, the company that acquired you, they know that you probably have a fixed date, but they're also totally cool if you just want to stay forever. So there's that's true. Kind of there's a weird thing going on there where you actually don't really want to be there anymore. You like the people you work with and the teams you work on and the stuff you do most of the time, but you don't really want to be there anymore because you started emotionally checking out because you sold it. It's not yours anymore.
I kind of wanted to, like, from my perspective, I kind of wanted to get out of the way. Like, I really like our team, and I feel like it was their opportunity to take the next step forward in their careers.
Yeah, agreed.
And if I was there, that wasn't going to happen. The other thing too is I thought, like, I remember how in the first episode of the series, we were talking about how you want to polish your business and really have it organized really well the way you like it. And it's, you really know it like the back of your hand. And I think that unfortunately, sometimes that also kind of like puts blinders on you, and you get stuck in doing things the way you've always been doing them.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about getting out of the way so they can try some other stuff, make it like, let it be theirs, and let them change stuff the way they want to. Whereas I was finding myself, they would want to like make changes, and I'd be like, oh geez, like that wouldn't be the thing that I would change. I feel like that's working really well. I would be working on this other thing. And the priorities were out of sync. And I think sometimes there's something to be said about the founders, the original founders, kind of stepping aside to let some of that innovation happen, and bring some new blood into the thought process that was going on in the company. Yeah, absolutely.
I think for some circumstances too. I mean, like our particular acquisition, we were still operating. Like we were still like after we were acquired, we continued to operate our part of the business. For some founders, there's maybe another way to do this. Like I've seen it on occasion where they end up being like part of the board, or they kind of like move on to like an observational role, I want to say, but like an advisory. But we would just like, I mean, I don't think that ever really crossed our minds, because for us, we were just like, this is too important to let go. So this is the other thing too, is like you really want to hold on to that thing because you have a lot of investment tied into it, as we've alluded to. And in the previous episode, when we talked about how you have like financial obligations and moral obligations, so you don't want to let this thing go. But the paradoxically, you need to, for it to actually be totally able to like reach its actual value, to fly by itself.
Exactly. Going back to your point about like taking like more of an observational role on a board or something like that. I just don't see that as being me. I'm always like, we're kind of like startup guys, right?
You would have a tough time
like
with
I want to roll up my sleeves and get into the code and know how it works on like what makes the thing tick, and getting onto a board. I guess I wouldn't say I'm board material. I shouldn't say that. But
would you say you'd be too bored?
I would be very bored.
I'm a dad. Yeah. I get to make dad jokes. I'm a dad. So.
No, but I just don't see me as being particularly effective that way. There's lots of other people that can do that sort of stuff. Yeah. Whereas I feel like I'm more valuable being able to like build things. And I like, same with you, Dave. I feel like you're incredibly effective at like building something. So
we're operators. It's like we want to. It's actually like a venture capital term, like to be an operator. But like we are entrepreneurs. Yeah. We want to do this. That's what we want to do, is build it from the ground up. It's less exciting, frankly, in other phases. It's really fun when you start getting market traction with something new. That is a really amazing feeling. It's an adrenaline rush like you wouldn't believe, right? So I think going back to this is like over time, this like transition out of your essential roles, it starts to happen. Like I remember distinctly when, all of my salespeople were under different managers.
Yeah, you had no reports. I remember one day you like messaged me. Yeah, you're like, you won't believe this. I have no reports right now.
Yeah. So, you start working more on the business after that. So, rather than like, I wasn't doing many sales calls by then. By then I was, I would help if people needed help, for sure. I'd pop on a call. But by then I was doing more like sort of like knowledge dump. Like we had Confluence. I built. And not to toot my own horn, but one of the people at Rave said it was a masterclass in a business enablement like Confluence setup. I had videos on everything, like short videos, customer objections. I had documentation, screenshots. I was all in on that, because I was like, I needed to get everything in here onto that page and make it like searchable and useful and all those kinds of things. But it's a slow but steady process. And like Chris, like you had, didn't you have like a list of like 100 like tasks in Confluence or something that's like, once I get this done, I can leave, kind of thing.
Like our staff knew I was going to be leaving, and they had about 2 months notice, I think, something like that. But once we got down to like the last 2 weeks, we kind of like we were transitioning things all throughout those 2 months and everything, no big deal. But then we kind of got like this list that had developed of like all these like loose ends. So literally what we did was all of our developers, I think it was 2 weeks, came into the office, we sat in a boardroom, and we systematically went through everything and made sure that it was all in a place that they all understood everything. We documented stuff. We like, we had like I remember going through like all of our cloud resources like one by one and being like, okay, what does this do exactly, where it like, and documenting everything. And it was just like all the ways that we could make sure that they were in a good place to kind of keep running things as they were going. It's that is going to be a huge part of your time. You're going to see like your like new projects going into the inbox are going to slow down quite a bit, but you're going to kind of develop all these like transition activities that you're really going to have to like, you're not going to get them all done either. Which is kind of like maybe a myth, is that before you leave, you're going to have everything wrapped up. So let's bust that myth.
Yeah.
One thing I did was we actually set up a WhatsApp group, and we called it the Bat Phone, so that if any of our engineers or developers are dealing with something and they just need a bailout, they need to ask a question that they couldn't find in Confluence or they couldn't find in our documentation or what have you, they could message me through it, and that worked out really well. It didn't get used a ton, but
that was the point, though. Like you don't use the Bat Phone every day. You can't call Batman every day. He's busy.
Yeah. It also got used to invite me to the happy hours and things like that that were happening at the office that you didn't usually go to, Dave. But anyway,
that's why I never saw it in WhatsApp. I guess I was in a different group. That's fine.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fine.
That explains it.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine. But it's kind of an interesting piece though there too. One thing that you kind of like were alluding to is that there's like kind of, it's weird when there's a timeline. So there's kind of like so for a while we were like, we're doing the earn out. People don't really know when we're going to leave, but then we were kind of like, we're going to signal, okay, we tell the executive first, this is when we're going to leave. This is the day. We give them lots of warnings. So it was like 2 months away. And then we communicate that to our team. And then you have kind of like okay, this is fine. Like we're going to work this out. We're working on our transition. And then there's sort of like the freak out, like about, I don't know, 2 weeks away from leaving. It's kind of like, oh God, we have all these questions about all these other things. And then on top of that is that people just treat you different during that, it's kind of like I don't want to call it I'm going to call it this, but like a lame duck presidency where you're kind of just like, you can't really do anything anymore. People know you're on the way out. They kind of start working around you a little bit, but that's actually the point. You're actually trying to do that. You're trying to get them to figure that out. But it feels super weird. You're going to feel really, really strange that you are a very non-essential part of the business and that you are successful in your objective to make yourself irrelevant. It's bizarre, but it's extremely important. And so I kind of got thinking about this, like, okay, like for us, we didn't have like tons of guiding. We had our normal guiding principles, which we alluded to in the 3rd episode. But at this point, I think we didn't really have a great plan for when we would be done. Like we did, but we didn't. So I actually found something on this. So in Harvard Business Review, there was a piece on how to make selling your business a fulfilling experience, which is a hilarious thing to think about because I think like as a title, I think most founders would be like, why wouldn't it be fulfilling? I've got all this money now, but it's crazy. Like, and the crux of this article is like, this is a headline: seek clarity on your life's purpose. And I think it's bang on. Your identity will die. Once you walk out of that building on the last day, it's over. They don't care about you. And they do, like as a person, but they don't care about you from like a professional perspective. They got business problems. They're going to deal with them themselves. They got something they're working on. They don't need you anymore, and so you kind of have this like freak out.
Yeah.
I'm doing this with my hand. You freak out because like it's weird because on the one hand you're this like jubilant, I accomplished something, and on the other hand you're devastated because you accomplished something.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre, but it's important to understand and sort of like reorganize your life's purpose. Ideally, you would do this before you're done. Like I'm telling you as a heads up, if you're going through this right now as a founder, start thinking about what you're going to do. It's stressful. It's really unnerving.
Yeah. I think my first day after, we had left, I, got up, I worked out, which I didn't normally do in the morning, but I could now do that. And then, I think I did my laundry or something. And I think I checked my email, and then it was like 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm like, well, I guess I'll take a nap. And then I think I woke up from the nap and I'm like, oh my God, this can't be it.
Yeah, that was it. It was done.
Like, and then you're like, like I am already like, I'm only like, 6 hours into being done and I'm already having the freak out. Like, what am I going to do next? One of the things too is you sign like an NDA, or not an NDA, a non-compete, non-solicit, like all that sort of stuff. Like you can't, all that stuff that you were really good at. For us, it was building public safety software. You can't do any of that stuff anymore. So you have to like start from scratch in something else. So like, I don't know. For me, I essentially took the summer off, and I enjoy windsurfing and water sports and stuff. So I got to do a lot of that during the summer, but it was tough. Definitely had many moments of rainy days where I couldn't be out on the lake and being like, I am in such a weird headspace right now. Yeah. Dave, I think you were actually on vacation because you did the smart thing and you actually went on vacation after we finished.
Yeah, well, like
And I think you had a moment where you just sort of like were
the
like
freak out. The
yeah.
freak out. It happens. So like there's a freak out on the day of it happens. And then there's one like there's a couple probably months later, like peppered in there, you know. And for me, one of them was I went on vacation with my wife and daughter, and we were in Istanbul, and I just had this freak out. I'm like, who am I? What am I doing here? Like, what does this mean to anything? Like what the hell's going on? And it was really unnerving. And there's a ton of psychology on this. You know, you can go find this information out there, but the long and short of it for you is that when you sell your company, like have a plan. And even so, understand that you're still going to be like pretty disturbed during that plan. I was thinking about you, Chris. I remember, I think day 2. So day 1, you had your nap. Day 2, you sent me a PowerPoint deck on businesses that like a business idea that you had, and you had done like a 25 slide, like, here's what I'm thinking. This is the market. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it was just day 2. Like I was laughing because I was like, I think I told you, you're going to have a really tough time with this because you're just like, it is 100% of what you do, or like 99% of what you do, short of like sleeping and eating, like work was everything. And so it's just sort of like, what are you going to do? And so it was manifesting in these like really weird reactions. I almost think I'm not talking about you specifically, just for what it's worth.
Right.
Here we go. Here's the wind up. But I feel like, you know, this is probably a decent case that people should have a therapist when they come out of this, because they need to talk to somebody about what this means. And it makes me think too of that. You remember that expression you said, Chris loves metaphors, and it was athletes die twice in their life. I guess this isn't a metaphor, but die twice in their life. You know, once when they retire and once when they die. And it's because it's just such a change. They just lose all that identity, all the hype, like of the stadiums and the people and the people wearing jerseys of that, like with their name on it and all that stuff. They lose that, and it rattles them. And we weren't professional athletes. You know, we didn't win the Larry O'B or the Stanley Cup or whatever. But we did win something. We won at business, and it was kind of like this moment where now what?
Yeah, it's traumatic. It's traumatic. So prepare yourself. You know, if you've got other business ideas, like, beautiful, you know, hopefully that don't conflict with your non-compete or anything like that. That's great, because I think, you know, if you've built a business and you've gotten it to the point where you could be acquired and, you know, exit, you know, you're probably very entrepreneurial anyways. But I think we were so invested into our one thing that I think I'll just speak for myself, but I didn't have any other like backup plans. I didn't have some other product waiting in the wings that I wanted to do. So it was really tough. And I think there's something to be said about having another thing to go to pretty much right after. Like maybe you take the vacation or something like that for a few weeks and then come back, but then like have a plan for what you're going to do. And I don't think I did that well. Dave, I don't know about you. I don't know where you classify
I was working on that, you know, actually we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I think like for me, even so, I think as a founder, just be prepared that it's going to be weird. You're going to need some time to process. You might want a therapist. That wasn't in my notes either. I'm just winging that. Like you might actually. And honestly, I also would suggest don't rush into another thing. I actually think you owe it to yourself, like a big thing. Like don't start another business right away unless there's a really fantastic opportunity and you want to do it. Fine, that's okay. But I do think, like for Chris, like for you in your circumstance, like you need the time. You need the time to mentally recharge, to be your sharpest self, to be your best self, and to be able to go to market again with something awesome. That takes time. So yeah, very interesting. You know, on the
very
one
deep,
hand,
very emotional.
Yeah. Do you want to have like maybe a little cry here? Maybe we can do a little cry on air.
Get it all out.
the man cry. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks, folks. Thanks for joining us. This was part 4 of our 4-part series on how to get acquired. We hope you found it interesting. We'd love questions, comments, feedbacks, concerns, threats. We can fire them all through us or our website, startupdifferent.com. Also, rate the pod and check us out on social. Thanks so much for joining us. Next week, we'll be starting a new series, and we will tell you more about it then. See you later. Thanks for joining us. If you like what you heard, subscribe to and rate Startup Different in your favorite podcast app. If you want to see our radio faces, check us out on YouTube at Startup Different and look us up on social. We're probably there if you are. And lastly, do you want to feature your startup on the show? Reach out via our website, startupdifferent.com. See you next time.